A little about yourself.
Okay. My name is Keith Wright. I am 33 years old. I'm an Aquarius. No, I'm just kidding. I am from Houston, Texas. I'm a project manager on this project here at Fluor. It's called the Rapid Project. I've been working at Fluor for about 10 years, and this is I think it's my third international assignment. I've been also stationed in Houston, in Saudi Arabia, in Qatar, and now I'm in the Philippines.
That's
So,
nice. What is your greatest strength?
That's a very tough question. That's like something that you hear in a behavioral interview. My greatest strength, I guess it would be, I don't know, I guess I'm kind of a go-getter or an attacker of problems. I like to be tenacious in how I address problems and follow them through till completion, and make sure that whatever resolution of that problem is facilitated in an efficient manner. So I guess just being able to track everything and facilitate it through completion, I think that's a strength that any project engineer, any project manager needs to have.
Then what about your greatest weakness?
I don't have any weaknesses. I'm just kidding. My greatest weakness, man, of all of my weaknesses. Let me see if I can count them all. I don't know if we have that kind of time. Let's see, my greatest weakness. I don't know if it's really a weakness, but one of my challenges that anybody faces is really maybe communicating effectively. It's always tough to communicate your ideas and communicate those in a way that people are receptive to the style of communication that you have. So that's really a challenge that anybody faces throughout their whole career, is communicating effectively. And that's why we have things like Toastmasters groups and things like that, so that you can join to help polish those kinds of things.
What motivates you in your
What motivates
job?
me? My job? Really just being the best that I can be. I have about 10 or so direct reports, 10 or so employees. So perhaps making sure that those guys can be the best that they can be, and making sure they're performing to the best of their ability. I guess that's what motivates me.
Tell me a little bit about your career path. How did you move into a project manager?
That's a good question. Probably, well, when I was working in Florida with about 2 years of experience, so this would have been about 2009, I kind of got, I guess, bored with the day-to-day life of just sitting in a cube all day, just doing the same thing every day, and I decided that wasn't really for me. So I talked with one of my mentors, and he got me kind of on a different path, and that's when I got sent to Qatar on a project. And but in general, really, the way that I got from like an engineering role and I jumped over to project management is just communicating with my boss, my boss's boss, my mentors, and things like that, and voicing the career path that I thought I wanted to have at that time, and they kind of got me propelled in that way.
Since you mentioned about your mentors, who were your mentors, and as you enter project management, what did you learn from them?
Oh, that's a good question. I've had, I guess, maybe 2 or 3 different official mentors, I guess, of various levels. One of my mentors was a project director on a previous project. Another one is currently a sales, I think they're an area sales lead in Kuala Lumpur. Probably the biggest thing that I learned from any of them, and they kind of echoed the same message, I guess, is that don't let anybody else make or establish your career path. Like if you want to do something with your career, you have to do it yourself, right? You can't just wait for somebody to come along and say, hey, do this and you'll go here. You got to make your own decisions, and if things aren't going the way that you want them to go, you got to figure out how to make those changes happen for yourself, because nobody else is going to do it for you.
What do you feel is the value of a good project manager?
Yeah, that's a good question. That's a common question that comes up quite a bit. There's probably 5 or 10 different key traits that are necessary for any good project manager. The one that I find the most applicable is probably centers around consistency. I've probably been on at least 10 different projects here at Fluor, and the leaders and the mentors that I value the most are probably the ones that are consistent in how they treat people or how they manage. I'll just give you an example. Like say, for example, if you have a manager and you come in one day, he's like really nice to you, and everything's going good, and you come in the next day and he's like throwing things, and he's like furious, and he's really angry, and then if you have a manager like that, you just don't know what to do because you don't know how they'll react, right? So I would say consistency in how you manage people is probably one of the most important traits that any manager can have.
How do you keep your skills in project management?
How do I keep, what do you mean, how do I keep them?
How do you keep up your skills?
Oh, okay, all right. We do that in several different ways. We have a pretty strict training regimen here at Florida. We have to meet certain training hours every year or annually. So that's one way to do that. We have different types of training, like leader-based training or computer-based training. But another way that project managers hone their skills is also, I'm a mentor to other mentees. I have, I think, 5 or 6 mentees. Well, there's an old saying or an old adage that says, if you want to be sure that you really know something, then you should teach it to somebody else, right? Like whenever you give a presentation to somebody about any particular subject, before you give that presentation, you have to know exactly what you're talking about, right? So that's another way to make sure that you know something, is to present that idea to somebody else.
What are your favorite aspects of being a project manager?
Probably, if I had to pick one, if I could compare project management to other areas, like a specific discipline type role, I would say the problems that you run into or the issues that you encounter are a little more complex, and really project management is about problem solving, right? That's generally what you do at a high level, is just first one day you're solving a problem that's like way over here, next day way over here. So I just like the complexity of the problems that you run into.
Describe one of your most challenging projects, and why was it challenging, and how did you pull the project through it?
Okay, well, I'm not sure I'm in a high enough role to pull the whole project through, but maybe the areas that I've worked in, I've pulled them through. Probably one of the most difficult projects I've been on is probably my last project, where I was stationed in Saudi Arabia. The client was really tough. There was just a tough project all around. We were under the gun to get things completed on time, and client was complaining we're spending too much money, wasting too much time. Oh man, the complaints were just coming in every day. But really, the way that we pull that through is just managing it to a very fine level of detail. Tackling and trying to predict the problems in advance, solve them before they became actual problems. Really just managing every aspect of the problems you're trying to solve.
Tell me about a time when you moved a project into a yellow or red status, and how did you report on it, and how did you get back into a green?
Okay. Well, I don't think I've ever personally moved it into that status, but different elements of the project move into, I guess, what you call a critical status all the time. Like in a project management point of view, if something like that happened, you would say these key series of events were on the critical path, right? Hey, you guys ever heard that? The critical path in any project is a sequence of activities that are holding up the entire project, right? That would be called a critical path. That's actually happened to me several times. Happens all the time, actually. But just going back to my previous answer there, really just kind of categorizing and focusing every element of that problem, and maybe putting it on a spreadsheet or Tracking it to a very fine level of detail will help you resolve that kind of problem. Another key thing that you have to do in instances like that is, say for example, we do a lot of international work at Fluor. It's a global company. It's a Fortune 500. So we're always working with different parties around the whole globe. Like I might be working with people in Houston or Canada or Asia or whatever. Keeping track of open items like on an action items list or a register, establishing milestones or due dates and holding people to those milestones and pushing people to deliver. Like if I say, when are you going to provide me this information I need? And you say, oh, next week. I might say, well, next week has 5 days. Which day next week? And then when that day comes, if you don't give me that information, then I'll be on the phone asking you for that information. So keeping people accountable and making sure you have scheduled milestones to facilitate that to completion. That's usually what's involved in something like that, especially when it gets on the critical path.
How do you deal with client employees with low motivation or low skills?
With client employees, okay. Well, luckily for us, most of our clients are pretty high caliber on this project. I'm not just saying that for the camera, but you might have in just direct employees with low motivation. That's pretty common. You really just got to find a way to motivate people. One way that people do that is if I have a low performing employee or a low motivation employee, I'll try to find a way to connect with that employee on a personal level and leverage those traits or that part of our relationship in order to make them perform on a more business level. That's one of the ways that people can do that.
Can you tell us about one failure in your job and what you've learned from it?
I've never had any failures. I'm just kidding.
High caliber.
Yeah, failures happen all the time. Luckily, the way that Fluor works anyway, or that most major companies work, is even if one person fails, it's not the end of the world, right? If one person fails, usually the way that somebody will describe that is we failed, and not pin that failure on any one person. So if there was an instance where either I failed or one particular person failed, usually the team would rally and try to figure out why they failed and figure out how to get out of something like that. Thanks.
If we were to ask about your supervisors,
Mhm.
your past supervisors, what would they tell me or us about you?
They would tell you that I'm the great. No, I'm just kidding. I don't know. I'm interested to know myself. What would they say? They would probably say something along the lines of Keith is motivated. Keith has a high level of discipline. He likes to tackle issues as soon as they arise. I don't know, hopefully things like that, hopefully good things. Maybe I'll go and ask them. I'm kind of interested now that you asked that question.
From our last question, can you tell us about a personal legacy that you created on one of your projects?
A personal legacy, okay. Well, the way that I usually like to work is I like to go above and beyond what's required of me. A lot of our work culture here at Fluor is centered around the word expectation, right? So in any project or any given situation, whoever you're working for expects something from you, right? So really your whole job is managing expectations. Like whenever you complete an assignment, do you give a B status response or a product, or do you give an A or an A plus? So the way that I'd like to manage my work is to give just as much as I can in the allotted time that I have to give it. So I think if any past clients asked about that, I think they would say that I went above and beyond the call of duty, as they say. So I like to give, as they say, 110%. It doesn't always happen in every given situation, but any given assignment or project or a task is really just about managing expectations. So as long as you manage your expectations from the client point of view, then you'll succeed no matter what task you're assigned.
That concludes our interview.
All right. Okay. Yeah. Well, thanks for your time.
Thank
for your
you.
time, guys. Assignment here. What are you going to do with the info? Show it to your class or your professor?
We're planning to make documentation.
Okay.
And if that's okay with you.
Yeah, that's cool. Yeah.
And we plan to learn more about the things you have said and implement it in our lives, because we plan to be project managers in
Yeah,
the
sure.
future. So thank you for the information that you have given us.
Yeah, anytime. Well, if you guys have any questions at any other time, I'm always here. So feel free to get with Wella or stop by, or maybe we can have lunch or.
May video sa harap, pre.
Video lang pala.
Success. Success, pre.
Diyan siya bumawi kasi kanina wala siya sa video. So yan, binibidyo na namin siya.